because when you hear these two words, it really brings out a lot of different emotions in people. A lot of times it's ridicule and laughter. And I would say that most people that are now really seriously looking into this topic laughed at it at first, and myself included. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, throughout the years, hearing about flat Earth, and it conjures up pictures of boats going over the edge. So I just looked at it as absolutely incredibly silly. It wasn't until about 3 years ago when I came across a video, and it was actually making fun of the Genesis account, and it was showing, what would happen if you took a literal interpretation of the creation story. And that is what kind of perked my interest, because I started saying, well, wait a minute, but that's in the Bible. And myself being a 6-day literal creationist, I'm like, well, wait a minute, if I'm taking these parts literal, what about these other ones? Like when it comes into pillars, when it comes to the firmament. And it was the firmament, to tell you the truth, that really opened my eyes.
Hello, and welcome to the XYZ Podcast,
where we talk about things that matter,
things that don't,
and everything in between.
I'm Lauren Hutchins. I'm 19. I'm in between generations. Some call me a millennial, and some call me Generation Z.
And I'm Bob Hutchins, her dad, and I'm from the generation called X.
On each episode, we interview 3 people from 3 different generations about topics that can be interpreted differently depending on your age.
And then try to find what things we all share in common, rather than what makes us different.
Hi, and welcome back to the XYZ Podcast. Today we have a full plate of conspiracy theories, ranging from flat Earth to Avril Lavigne to lizard people.
And also virtual reality.
Oh, yeah.
So grab your popcorn, your alien dolls, strap in. This is going to be a lot of fun. First up, we have
Robbie Davidson, a flat earther.
A flat earther. So here we go. Okay, welcome to this segment. I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Robbie Davidson. And Robbie, where are you calling in from? I didn't even ask you.
I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
I knew you were Canadian, but I didn't know if you were actually still in Canada, because you lived for a while in the U.S., right?
I'm actually dual myself. I was actually born in the States. My father was finishing his master's, and I was born. So I actually have citizenship in both countries.
That's awesome. And we were just talking, Robbie, you and I go back probably 17, 18 years. We've known each other on and off. Our paths have crossed. We're kind of the old guys on the internet, but you were with a startup back in the late 90s, I think online, as I was, and our paths crossed, and we've both been involved in different things. But the reason that we have you on the show, on the podcast now, and what we want to talk about is
the flat Earth. And I have been doing so much research about this lately. Whereas I know it's not a conspiracy to you, but some people call it a conspiracy theory, and I love conspiracies and love thinking about different ideas and different ways to see the world and like different ways to interpret things on what's real and what's not. And so I'm so interested in the flat Earth and since you're one of the top guys to talk about it, just what you have to say and to give a little explanation about it.
Yeah, so give us a background of what you're doing right now and how you came to this realization of your belief on flat Earth. And I know you've got your fingers in a lot of different things, but I know this is a big thing for you. So just give us your story, if you would.
Sure. Well, like I said, I never thought I'd ever be speaking on this topic of all topics, because when you hear these two words, it really brings out a lot of different emotions in people. A lot of times it's ridicule and laughter. And I would say that most people that are now really seriously looking into this topic laughed at it at first, and myself included. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, throughout the years, hearing about flat Earth, and it conjures up pictures of boats going over the edge. So I just looked at it as absolutely incredibly silly. It wasn't until about 3 years ago when I came across a video, and it was actually making fun of the Genesis account, and it was showing, what would happen if you took a literal interpretation of the creation story. And that is what kind of perked my interest, because I started saying, well, wait a minute, but that's in the Bible. And myself being a 6-day literal creationist, I'm like, well, wait a minute, if I'm taking these parts literal, what about these other ones? Like when it comes into pillars, when it comes to the firmament. And it was the firmament, to tell you the truth, that really opened my eyes. I had read through Genesis. I got involved with creation ministry in my Christian walk, like Answers in Genesis, and even Kent Hovind was a huge inspiration to me. And I just kind of bypassed some of these verses, including the firmament. And the firmament was put in place to divide the waters from the waters. And that really perked my interest. So started kind of looking into that. One thing led to another. And I got, in contact with some different various videos, and I started doing my research, and one thing led to the next. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, there's no way this can be true. And I just started seeing such inconsistencies. For example, the Bible very clearly says that the earth was created before the sun, moon, and stars. Well, how does that work with a Big Bang heliocentric universe? So really, the first thing for me was kind of shaking my beliefs in a heliocentric solar system, as we're taught that basically everything revolves around the sun, where when you looked in the Bible, every mention of the sun, it's moving. The sun, the moon, the stars. What was really interesting is when you got to the earth, there's over 40 verses to say it's stationary, it's firm, it's fixed. It doesn't move, according to what the Bible says, if you're going to take a literal approach to it. So I came to it with a very biblical, literal approach, but because I was very skeptical, I had to kind of look for that empirical proof. Now, when I went searching for true scientific, experiments, not photos, not, pictures from NASA, I really wanted to know, can you scientifically prove the curvature or the movement of the earth? I was shocked to find out that it does not exist. There's never been an empirical scientific experiment on earth to prove the curvature or the movement of the earth. And I'd say there's three main groups of people that are coming to this topic. You had mentioned the conspiratorial. Absolutely, that's definitely a component of this community. But you also have the Bible literalists, the spiritual, but you have a third component, the people that just want true scientific, empirical experimentation. They don't care about anything other than, can we scientifically verify that this is the truth from earth? And again, people everywhere are finding out that there's so many holes in what we've been taught our whole life.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So what I was brought to it was conspiracies. Really, my brother is a big conspiracy theorist, and I love watching conspiracy stuff. And what brought me to it was, I don't know if I completely believe in it, but what just perked my interest, that was the one thing that really got me, was different flight patterns that I saw. There's so many conspiracy theorists. There's a flight that they always talk about from the Philippines to LA, and they had to make a woman's water broke, so they had to make an emergency landing. So when you look at a globed Earth, the fastest flight plan would to be continue to LA. But instead, the fastest route for some reason was to go to Alaska, which on a flat Earth makes so much more sense. And so for me, that was the thing that I was like, that's so interesting. Why would they do that? I just thought that was something. And then I started to find there were so many other strange flight patterns like that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're finding really, really strange is that you're seeing, in the northern hemisphere, you're seeing with flight trackers, you're seeing the GPS kind of cover these planes, no problem. But you have a big problem in the southern hemisphere. It will start off tracking, but the minute it goes over the ocean, it disappears until it starts to land on land again. And that's a very, very peculiar thing. But this topic, like I said, when someone seriously starts just looking into it, there is literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that start popping out everywhere. It's just a mountain of evidence to support that we have been lied to. Now, the question is, what truly are we on? Again, as far as a conspiracy goes, it's probably the most upper echelon. For me, and I always explain this, that for me, before Flat Earth, the moon landing was a really big one. Even in conspiracy circles, most people, if you didn't believe in the moon landing, they're like, what? What do you mean? Of course they landed on the moon. Myself, I didn't believe that they landed on the moon, but I never could really figure out, well, why would they lie? And I say to people, hypothetically, if they didn't land on the moon, then the question is, how far can they go? Where have they gone? Because I put this evidence in my first film, Scientism Exposed. But I basically show you the fact that in 1960s and 70s, they went 248,000 miles away, so 500,000 miles away to the moon. No problem, there and back. But it's almost been 50 years and they've never been back. And what's even more startling is if you look into it, all space agencies, the furthest that man has been in the last 50 years is 400 miles. That's the furthest that man has been. So ask yourself the question, how is it that in the 1960s and 70s, they went through the Van Allen radiation belts, which Orion, trial under fire, NASA even admits they're having a problem trying to figure out the shielding. How are they going to go through the Van Allen radiation belts? But just discard that for a second. They went to the moon back and forth with basically a processor power of a speak and spell. Literally, I think it's half the power of an iPhone 3. It's a million times more power we have in our latest cell phones. And the idea that we would be going to the moon, with our cell phone. And that's just something, one little thing. But I ask people all the time, I'll be traveling and they'll say, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm shooting a movie. Oh, what's it on? Scientism. And then they'll ask, well, what's scientism? And we can get into that a little bit more, because that's really where the biggest problem is. I love science. I'm not against science. I'm not anti-science. Nobody in this community is. What we're against is scientism, the belief, a theory, a religion, an agenda, and they've moved away from true empirical science. And that's the problem. So when you see them going 250,000 miles in the 60s and 70s, and yet since then, no one's ever been back, but no one's even been further than 400 miles. They say that the ISS is 250 miles high. And also I basically say to, a lot of people when I'm talking to them, and I put it in my films, that they even admit that they're trying to gather all this technology so one day they can go to the moon or Mars. And that seems to be where the push is now, Mars. They're moving off to Mars. And yet, well, I'm still looking at the moon.
Well, I would say, let me play advocate on the other side is,
sure.
Well, if we've gone to the moon and we feel like, okay, we've got the rocks, there's nothing there, it's basically a desert with some dust and some rocks, why waste the time and money to go back there? We've already done that. So
Sure. But then I would say, especially for Lauren, wouldn't it be awesome for the first woman to be on the moon? I mean, women march for all sorts of different reasons. You think they'd be storming NASA and demanding that the first woman walk on the moon. Yet that's never happened. The first black man's never walked on the moon. No other country has put their flag next to America's. So to me, I think it's a pivotal point in this whole discussion, because if you're on the fence, or if you even will look into the moon landing, you might be open to this content we're going to be talking about tonight. But if you're rock solid, 100% they landed on the moon, everything that we get into and we talk further, it's going to seem absurd. You're going to roll your eyes. You're going to think this is crazy, and rightfully so, because, again, you really have to get past the moon landing. But there is a lot of other evidence, like I said, scientific, conspiratorial, even biblical, when it comes to they've really lied to us just about like evolution and different things that we can get into later.
Yeah, and with the moon landing, I think it's really interesting as conspiracies have gone that I think more and more people have taken that the moon landing could be fake. I feel like that's a conspiracy that people have started to think that, okay, maybe it was fake. And a lot of people believe that we've gone since, or they think, okay, maybe we faked the footage in order to, beat the Soviets there, beat whoever there. But I'm thinking that as time goes on, more and more conspiracies seem less crazy.
So you feel like there were some recent high def photos of some kind of satellite or telescope. It's been in the past month where of the moon, face of the moon, and it was so detailed and high def that they actually, you could see the leftovers of the rovers and other things from the visits to the moon. So you would say those are obviously faked.
Well, you'd have to send me those photos. For example, like I said, every photo that we have of the Earth, if you click on it, you just type in Google, pictures of Earth from space. And when you find something that you believe is has authority, like NASA or the government or whatever, click on it, and you're going to see at the bottom in fine print, it says composite. It says rendering. They actually admit that they can't get far enough. They have to stitch imagery together to compile the images of the globe. There is no real pictures of the Earth. The only one that supposedly is the real picture of the Earth is from the 72 Apollo mission, where they, for whatever reason, waited till the last mission to take a picture of the Earth. But you have major problems. You got clone stamping. You got all sorts of problems that forensic, photography experts have actually looked through it. There's major problems with that image. But what's really shocking is, like I said, this is something I did, and I encourage anyone to do. Click on the picture and look and see if it's a real photograph of the Earth, or if it's a composite, a rendering, a CGI. I mean, they'll give you the terms for it, but really what they're saying, and they've admitted to it in multiple interviews, is no, we stitch the data together, and we have photograph type experts that basically compile, and they have like clone stamping of clouds on the imagery. So what I'm saying is, really, when it comes down to this topic, everyone always rushes to NASA as that authority. Everyone rushes to photographs or to composites. The question is, can you verify the Earth's curvature or movement from Earth without any outside agency? And the question, and that's the answer, is you can't. You can't. I've been at this 3 years, and there's been debates. There's been all sorts of things happening with this community. It's exploding at an alarming rate, and nobody can come. I always say, if you want a really awesome challenge, you want to become famous and rich, all you have to do is just develop the experiment to conclusively prove the curvature or the movement of the Earth that's verifiable through the scientific method. You will be famous. You'll be an Einstein. You'll be a Newton. I mean, you will be renowned if you come up with that experiment, because to date, it's never been done. And no one is coming forward with any type of experiment. The flat earth community, we're desperately trying to really figure out all these different ways that we can do it through lasers and gyros and all sorts of different type of experimentation. Like I said, it's not just conspiracy theorists that are in this. There's a lot of people that truly want to run under the scientific method and figure out truly what exactly is going on.
Well, what about the what's it called? The European Space Agency.
ESA?
There's a Russian satellite that says their Electro L takes their photos are not composite and they're just one image of the Earth. Have you seen those?
Sure. But again, it's 2018. Why don't we have a 24-hour video HD of the spinning Earth from space? Go and find a spinning picture of the Earth, because they tell us that it spins at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. All you got to do is find it. You can't do it. It doesn't exist. There is no, and going back to the moon, what Bob had brought up, say, hey, it's a waste of time. Okay, well, let's go with what you're saying there. What about an advertiser, like a massive advertiser paying, for a 24-hour feed of our Earth from the moon, and it could have advertisers on it. It'd be millions and millions of dollars they would pay. All they got to do is put a camera up there, 24-hour feed, should be easy. And yet that's never been done. So again, that's another thing that the flat Earth community is asking for, is that they just put up a 24-hour feed of our Earth. I think with taxpayer money, they get $52 million per day. And really, what truly have they brought to humanity? So again, a lot of people are suspicious and they're saying, hey, look, we'd just like to see exactly what you're doing with your $52 million a day that NASA's getting. All these space agencies, you have to understand as well, too. People will say, well, what about Russia? And what about, China? Again, when you're talking about a deception this large, everyone, and I'm not talking about millions of people, but people on the upper ends of things would be involved with this, but very few people would know. For example, science teachers or pilots, they're not in on it. They've just been taught what they learned from their father and mother, or what they learned from their teacher. No one's truly gone out and verified, why do you believe what you believe? Is it because you were taught that, or is it because you could verify it for yourself? And that really is what it comes down to. Is zetetic astronomy really came down to the fact of saying, let's go out and test it for ourselves and see what we can find out. And people are doing this everywhere. Like I said, I've been in this for 3 years, put on conference. I've got 2 conferences coming up this year. And like I said, the media, everyone is really curious on what's going on, because it's not just one little group of people. This is affecting people of all different beliefs, all different walks of life. Female, doesn't matter. So many people. It's extraordinary to see what's going on. And instantly they go from an atheistic worldview instantly to a believer, because when you believe in something that's created, that's at the center of everything, that doesn't move, that everything moves around for us, you instantly become a believer in an intelligent design. So what I find fascinating about this discussion, whether or not a person's religious or not, they instantly come to the knowledge they were created, they are special, and they're unique. And everything that scientism has taught us, out of a random explosion created out of nothing, gives us nothing but randomness, no value whatsoever. And I think that's where the war is. The war is against scientism versus real science, and scientism versus God.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. But if we want to, I think that's a great point. I love that idea that it can bring people to some sort of religion or whatever it is that brings them to. And the one thing that convinces me the Earth is round is when is the science-based things. Is I love the idea, and I could completely believe in the idea that all the government is conspiring to, control us in an easier way. But the one thing that holds me back is when I look at like a shadow. If the Earth is flat, when the sun is rotating around it, how do you talk about time zones? You would just see the sun across the Earth. A shadow would be shown on both sides if the Earth is flat.
Let me clarify, because so many people coming to this have so many questions, but what they fail to recognize is they'll go to say something like Flat Earth Society, which is a complete misrepresentation of anything that the modern day community believes. I don't know anyone that would agree with that we're a flying pancake in space. First of all, we're not in space with other planets. People will say, well, wait a minute, all the other planets are round. How come we're not? You have to start picturing it that we're basically and I'm going to use a biblical, model, because there are different various models in the community. I'm going to go with the biblical model, shows the firmament, so that we're basically basically under the dome, or we're in a snow globe. Now, if we were hypothetically in a snow globe and the sun, moon, and stars were above us, I mean, think of a very, very big snow globe. There is no, space. There is no other, planets in that sense. So for a lot of people, they'll look at this and they'll have all these questions. And you brought up, how would you have seasons? How would you have this? Understand that the sun is not as big as what they told you. The sun is a lot closer than what they've told you. If you have a small sun, that's closer in proximity, even Aristophanes, the famous, back into the Greek where they knew that the earth was a sphere, even Neil deGrasse Tyson and other scientists have come forward and said the same results would happen on a flat earth if the sun was smaller and closer. So just because when we see these, articles, they'll say, look at the shadows, that shows that we're on a globe. No, hold on. If the sun is smaller and closer, we will yield the same results with the shadows, with the pegs, or with the wells in the ground. So what I'm saying is a lot of times you have to understand the model, because you're right. If it was the sun that was 93 million miles away and it was as big as what they're saying, we'd have a big problem. You're right. It would be sun all the time. But if you understand a lot of the models, you're going to see this perspective. As the sun travels away from you, it appears to go down. Just like when you look out in the sky and you see clouds and they're going down, down, down. Well, they're not going down. You know that. But to your eyes and to perspective, things get smaller and they go down to the horizon point. And if we were on a ball of 25,000 miles in circumference, as we rose in altitude, the horizon would drop from eye level. What we see, though, is if you go on a beach and you look out on a mountain, or you go on a hot air balloon, the horizon stays at eye level. That is impossible. They've done CAD experiments. They've done all sorts of computer animations based on balls even bigger than 25,000 miles in circumference. The higher you rise in altitude, your horizon is going to drop. It never drops. It stays at eye level. And we have like balloon footage at 120,000 feet without a fisheye lens and a GoPro, and it is completely flat. Now, most pictures that you're seeing, understand, if you put a GoPro or a fisheye lens on a camera, you're going to get a curve. Now, you can actually look at any footage, and you're going to see that when they rise up, even when they're at about 10 feet, the Earth already looks curved. Again, it's distorting the lens. But if you put a straight lens and you go up to 120,000 feet, that's 3 times higher than any plane is flying, commercial airline. It is flat as far as the eye can see, and the horizon is at eye level. So again, there's so many things with this. And when we conduct our own scientific experiments, when we look with our own senses, no one's ever felt the movement of the earth. Again, the Bible doesn't support it, but then our own senses don't support it. No one can feel the fact that we're moving at 66,000 miles an hour around the sun, but we're traveling around the entire Milky Way galaxy at over 1 million miles an hour. And we would actually oval around the sun. We actually speed up and slow down. Yet none of this is felt. And again, this cannot be verified with our senses or empirical science from Earth. All we rely on are all of these explanations. For example, like shadows, like you mentioned, this, that. Again, whatever we see in the luminaries doesn't necessarily tell us exactly what the shape is that we're on. It tells us things that are going on in the sky. But again, all of these things have been addressed many times over by a lot of people. And all you need to do is do a quick search. How do seasons work on flat Earth? Watch 2 or 3 videos and you at least understand. You don't have to agree with it, but you'll go, oh, okay, it would make sense. It does work. It's just, I don't believe the sun is that close or that small. But if it is that close and that small, it does work. Seasons work. Everything works. There wouldn't be, hundreds of thousands of people coming to this, risking their reputation, their livelihood, something so incredibly silly as, flat Earth, if there wasn't something to it. That's what's so startling about this entire topic.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's a great point. I agree that but I feel like also you could do that with almost anything. You could change, if you change your perspective of what it is and say it's smaller, it's bigger, a lot of things can make sense. You could fit almost anything into a box.
I want to back up a second because I think I heard you say something. I want you to clarify because it's a huge issue. Did I hear you say there are no other planets and there are no other stars and there are what is it that we see up in the sky?
No. What I would say is throughout time the planets, as we call them today, we're called the wandering stars. No, they exist, but not in the fact of like terra firma, in the sense that NASA and space agencies tell us what they are. If you go from a biblical point of view, they're wandering stars. They're different lights, they're different colors. This is exactly what they are. So when I said that, they could be round, they could be lights. I'm not saying that either way, but what I'm saying is just because all the pool balls on a pool table are round doesn't make you don't have to have the table as being round as well too. A lot of people will say, well, of course it's round. We believe it's round, 100%. It's round. but round doesn't mean sphere. You don't have to be a sphere to be round. And you can easily go around the world. Like if you take your finger on a dinner plate and you go around the dinner plate, that's how you go around the world on a flat earth. You don't actually have to go around a ball. So again, when you got into flight paths before, again, that brings up an interesting point, because a lot of people, when they're thinking about this, they're like, how does this work? I mean, these guys don't believe it's round. No, we believe it's round, but round like a penny, or round like a pancake, or round like a pizza. That's in the sense is what we're talking now. Exactly.
So
what's the shape? We don't know.
So do you subscribe to, I've heard another flat earther say, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's the right term, but another person who believes in flat earth.
Yeah, that's fine.
He believed when someone asked him about the stars and the planets and looking through telescopes and seeing other round objects in the sky, he said, well, those are all fake too. That's just like a planetarium. Do you subscribe to that too?
No, and I wouldn't say that far. I know that there's some that might want to say that we're in a planetarium, everything's beamed that way. But I'm saying, for argument's sake, that sure, I'll go with the fact they could be round. But again, if you take your telescope out and you basically zoom in on Mars or Mercury or whatever you want, Venus, what do you see? Again, we're dealing with authorities. And again, I'm talking about the biggest telescopes in the world. One of the biggest telescopes is Lucifer, held by the Vatican, which they basically, they don't release any of the stuff that they're looking at. But it's just intriguing to me in the sense that if we look at with our own technology, we look up there, what do we see? You can't confirm it's an actual sphere. You can see something round, I'll give you that. But again, that doesn't make, it could be a light, it could be a disc, it could be anything. But for argument's sake, let's just say they are round. Let's just say that God created all the stuff that we see in the sky. Everything's round. Doesn't make us, we don't need to be round because we're not in space with everything else. We are a stationary plane. We don't move. Everything was created inside the firmament. Like the Genesis says, the sun, moon, and stars were put in the firmament. So if you take a literal point of view when you come to Genesis, and firmament's a big deal. Like it's a big deal for a lot of people because you can come up with canopy
Will
theories.
you take a moment and explain what the firmament is and what you see that as, just so?
Sure. Well, like when you get into Rakia was a strong surface spread out. Now, if you get into Amos 9:6, some translations will say God put his vaulted dome over the earth. Now, if you look at most translations, they'll say dome. But what I find is the NSAB, they go so far as to say vaulted dome. You can find such a parallel when you get into how God's creation was put together. And there is a complete symmetry when it comes to everything putting together. The firmament was to divide the waters from the waters. As the Bible describes, there's water below us and there's water above us. Now, I know that some, Christians would say, well, when the flood happened, the water came down and it's no longer there. Only problem is you have books, like even in Psalms, it talks about the waters are still above the heavens. They exist even after the flood. So if you want to take what God said seriously, God is saying there is water above us and water below us. So the way I look at it is that dome, that firmament that's put in place is to protect us. It's the same protection that in the Tower of Babel, they were building a tower to reach to the heavens. This is sincerely true. A lot of people will say, wait a minute, if we're on a spinning ball flying through space, and God is somewhere in the endless, outside of the endless galaxies or something, what would a little tower concern God? But if you read the account in the Tower of Babel, it's incredibly concerning. They literally, the base, I had heard, with historian estimates, the base of the Tower of Babel was 200 square miles, the base. This is a bigger tower than anything that we know. We think of the Sears Tower, or we think of the Twin Towers as being big buildings. The Tower of Babel was massive. They were building it to reach to the top. Just like in the flood, where it says the windows of heaven open, what Christians, it's really interesting, myself included. I had no problems with the fountain of the deep breaking open in the flood story, right? But it also says the windows of heaven opened up. The windows are actual literal windows that open up that have this water source. Now, if you look at the end of the flood, it says three sources stopped. The fountains of the deep stopped, the windows of heaven shut, and the rain from the clouds ceased. So when we have rain, I'm not saying I don't believe in clouds, of course, but I'm saying there is a large body of water that exists above us. And quite possibly, could it be why the sky is blue? Science comes up with a lot of different explanations, lots of, big formulas. But could it be as easy as the fact that there's water above us? Just questions.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I take that as he put the atmosphere there so we're able to breathe. If you look at obviously it's hard to find a common ground with hearing from other government agencies or NASA or any scientific agencies, but our atmosphere is what helps us breathe. So that's what I personally interpret that as. He put that there to help us breathe. And when I think about what you've said, what makes sense to me is when you go into water, there's not enough oxygen for us to breathe, so we drown. If you go into space, there's not oxygen for us to breathe, so we die. And so that's what I take that as, is he put that the water's above and water's below. Water asphyxiates you and you die. And so that's
But that water flooded the earth. That water flooded the earth. We know that there's water below because the fountains of the deep broke open. So we know that's not the atmosphere below us. There was real water that flooded the earth from below. The same water that was above in the windows of heaven. You understand, there's only a couple references to the windows of heaven, and really it's only for that purpose. Now, if those windows were continually open, I think we would all drown. But furthermore, it talks about the storehouses of hail that are reserved for judgment.
Okay, so if I get in a boat and I go and go and go, I'm going to hit that edge, right?
Okay, this is where it gets, I guess this is where your daughter will find it very interesting, Lauren, is the conspiracy area. Look up the Antarctic Treaty. Now, this is an interesting thing because okay, you have, right? Mm-hmm. So it's 34 countries. It's the longest standing peace treaty in the history of the world. Basically, it says that nobody can go to Antarctica unless it's scientific or it's government. Now, you can take a tour to Antarctica. You'll have a tour guide. He'll take you to the supposed South Pole, whatever. But you're not allowed to explore. You're not allowed to go backpacking, camping, anything you want to do without a tour guide there. If you try, you will be completely taken. There is nobody that's ever done it. Furthermore, I just did a video on the first circumnavigated flight. They're going to do it in October, where they're going to basically finally, because this is another interesting thing when you get into flights, there's never been a flight that circumnavigated the globe, with both poles. Well, they're supposedly going to do it this year. Only problem is, at the very bottom, it says that there will be no scientific equipment or experiments allowed on the flight. So they're opening this up to the civilians. But if you try to bring a compass, spirit level, a gyroscope, any type of monitoring equipment just to verify that you actually are going where you say you go, not just relying on GPS, which GPS, if you look at the LORAN system, GPS is just another form. The GPS is owned by the U.S. government, if you look into that. But again, everyone kind of believes this based on the satellites. Again, we'll go into satellites. Find a real picture of a satellite. Better yet, find a picture of a satellite taking another picture of another satellite, because there's supposed to be like 20,000 of them up there. Try to find a real photograph of a satellite taking a picture of another satellite, because there should be thousands up there. So I know I'm jumping around, but what I'm saying is there's problems in every single area, of this discussion. But your question was with Antarctica. We believe that basically if you take a globe, you squish it down, you've got the North Pole in the center of, think of the dinner plate, flat map, whatever. You've got the North Pole in the center. What circles the entire world is Antarctica. It's not a continent at the bottom of the globe like what we've been taught. It circles around. So you want to talk about an ice shore? The Bible says that God created the boundaries that the water would not be able to go from it. So if you read the Bible, it talks about God put boundaries in place. So what most people believe is that there's that perimeter. If you look into the Antarctic Treaty, it is heavily guarded by all of these nations, and they have completely, it's the only place anywhere on Earth you are not allowed to go as a business. You can't drill. And Admiral Byrd, I forget what year it was in the 50s or 60s, in all those explorations, like with Deep Freeze and a couple of those expeditions that were done with the U.S. government, he basically said that there was more reserves and minerals. There was uranium. There was gold. There was so much for the world over. They were carving up Antarctica before something happened. And if you go back into history and you read what was going on, something was discovered, something was found. They closed it up. They sealed it off, and they said no more. The minute they sealed off the perimeters, NASA was created the year after, and they started sealing up, going up. So understand this worldview. If you're in a dome, you basically find out what it truly is. You seal off the perimeters, and you start sealing off going above, because both of those, you would be able to verify what we're in. If you were allowed to go that way, Bob, you would see exactly what's going on. They won't allow that, not unmanned. You have a tour guide. They'll take you to some little ceremonial pole with penguins. That's not true, expedition. And then also, if you try to go up into space, and don't be deceived with SpaceX and Virgin Galactic. I've been following them, and they have been promising so many things. They have deposits from so many people, yet they prolong it and prolong it and prolong it. They're saying, I have a video out that they're saying they're going to be at the moon by the end of this year. There's 3 agencies that are going to be at the moon. I'm telling you right now, document this podcast, it's not going to happen. They're never going back to the moon, because they never have been to the moon. No country's going there. No woman's going to be on there. They're going to go further off, where our technology can't verify it, because I have a P900 camera. I can zoom in incredibly close on the moon, like incredibly close. I can't zoom in on Mars. That's why they're completely desperate to go and colonize Mars. And like you said, they don't care about the moon anymore. That's not true, because if you start reading how much they really care, Trump just came out and said, hey, let's get to the moon. Let's get to the moon. He really wants to be the first president to get back to the moon. All I'm saying is watch what happens. They're going to delay it and delay it. And I tell everyone that you're not going to see it in your lifetime, nor in the next. It's not going to happen. Everything comes down to gravity, the least scientific thing in the entire arsenal of what they say. It's never been tested. It's never been seen. It's never been measured. And if you look up gravity, 5 different scientists will give you 5 different answers
to what
gravity is.
So when you see long videos, hours long of things in space, numerous times over the years, space,
or the International Space
and
Station,
things are floating and droplets of water. What is that?
Droplets of water? Sorry.
No. I mean like people in zero gravity when they're in ships spinning and.
Yeah, and I mean we diagnosed a lot of the footage, and there's problems as well, because a lot of bubbles in space have been seen. A lot of the NASA and a lot of the space agencies, they basically do a lot of their stuff in pools. And I mean, you can look this up. I mean, just look up NASA in pools and swimming pools. They do all of their stuff in swimming pools. Now, what I'm saying is the stuff that we see up there, I'm going to say that no, I do not believe that it is truthful at all. There's many problems. Now, if you want to take one topic, just go look into the ISS. Just go on the other side and just see all the inconsistencies or problems. People will say, well, I've seen it. Well, it's impossible to see. You can hardly see a plane at 30,000 feet, right? And yet people will say, I saw the ISS. I saw it. You can't see it, nor can you see a satellite. The thing is like, a speck, even with a high-powered telescope. But people will claim this all the time. So I'm not saying there's something up there. I'm not sure what's up there. There's lights up there moving around, sure. But to sit there and say that's exactly what it is, you can't verify it.
Talking about.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I'm talking about video, hours and hours of video over the past 50 years of astronauts in space inside inside the spaceship, and them floating around, spinning, waters.
I'll give you 2 things. Even because I know where you're going with that. One is there's never been a footage of a nonstop going out of the capsule. So, for example, if I'll tell you what, I'll be a huge believer if they actually can produce something going from the inside to the outside continually. Just put a GoPro on their head and just shoot it. That's never been done. Number 2, there's never been a 180 or a 360 ever done in space, in the history of space. And I know at some point maybe this will happen. I just find it bizarre, like you said, out of the hours and hours and hours of footage, and with the technology we have, no one's ever done a 180 or a 360 in space. And like I said, you can't get an astronaut to do a continual shot going from the inside to the outside. It's never been done. There's big problems, though. I mean, if you're going to develop something like a submarine, why would you develop all the stuff on the outside? It would make no sense. You develop all the instrumentation on the inside so you can fix it. For some reason in space, these designers design everything that breaks down, so you have to go outside to fix it. That makes no sense. So no, I have a very big problem with all the space agencies.
I was just going to pull back to the conspiracy side of it is... They want us to believe that the earth is round in order to debunk religion, to debunk Christianity, to keep us in the dark for power. Why would the Greeks have discovered it so long ago, and now it's something like, how far back would this go is what I'm saying. Way back. I mean, this has gone way back. I think this deception, is way back, because again, in order to put something in place, you've got to eradicate the trueness of it. So the minute you basically make it some spinning rock in space, you got to remember, before it was heliocentric, which is, orientating around the sun, it was geocentric. So for the longest time, they went around, and I mean, you were looked at crazy if you believed in heliocentrism. I mean, it was geocentric. All the modern day scientists were saying it's geocentrism. The only problem was they had already basically concluded that it was a ball. We don't even know what the heck we're talking about, yet everyone gobbles it up the minute NASA or new scientists discover this. We rely way too much on these authorities as the governors of truth of our existence, and a lot of people are starting to question it, and I think it's a great thing just to question. I'm not even saying people should believe this. Don't believe a word I'm saying. Go out and prove it for yourself. I agree. I think everyone should question always what they're being told. So,
and I would say this: I have a statement, and then I have one last question for you, and I think Lauren has a question as well. I don't really care what shape the earth is. I consider myself a person of faith, a Christian who believes in the Bible. I think you and I have some different interpretations. What I have a problem with, I think, is that you're saying there's a grand conspiracy to keep this information of whether the earth is round or flat. Do I believe everything that science and the government says? Absolutely not. I'm a free thinker. Do I believe that they've told us things that aren't true and they've covered things up? Absolutely. Now, what I have a problem with is this is a grand conspiracy, and if people found out the truth, then all hell would break loose and everybody would believe in God. And I think if the world found out tomorrow that the earth was flat, yeah, it would be a huge revelation. But would they all of a sudden start believing in God? No. I don't believe so. I think if somebody really wanted to be conspiratorial and keep people from the quote truth, then I think they would be all about not spending their time and money creating this fake thing, but actually like trying to shut down churches and deny that Jesus existed and, try to destroy the credibility of every person on the earth that ever had a belief in faith. I don't think that this issue, I don't know, I just have a hard time believing, because really to me, I don't care if it's flat or it's round or it's square or whatever. It doesn't change my faith. And I don't think it would change most people's faith. So why put so much effort into this one issue? Well,
it's hard, and it's hard to put yourself in different shoes. I understand the logic. I never make this issue salvational, and I'm saying for any Christian out there, this is not a salvation topic. But nonetheless, is creation science important, or is eschatology important? We can always bring out this. A lot of people say, oh, we should be focusing on other things that are more important. The reality is that if you did find out that science and NASA lied to you, it would be a big deal. Like a lot of people say, it wouldn't matter if I found out it was flat or if we're on a ball. It would matter. A lot of people love to just kind of brush it off. But again, I'm not highlighting it and making it to a point where it's so pivotal. This is an area where God's directed me to spend time and to focus on. But for me personally, the gospel is the most important. And what I'm seeing is an incredible opportunity that I've never seen in my entire life. I've seen more people thirsty and hungry for the Bible, because when people realize they've been lied to by science and by NASA, the first thing they do, almost 99% of the time, is they run out and they want to read the Bible.
Yeah,
I still believe in my universe.
I think the interest, it's interesting and it's fascinating, and you've made us think a lot. And I am certainly more skeptical of what I see and read, and will be more perceptive and not just, take it for what it is. And I think I've always been that way, but I think you brought up some really good points. I had one more quick question. Lauren, did you have one more quick question?
Yeah, I just have one more quick question.
My quick question is, and if you could be succinct in answering this, quickly, is
sure.
Let's say, and I know this is going to be your opinion, because I don't, maybe you're pretty firm on this. Let's say you get past the Antarctic guards and you're able to penetrate the firmament. What do you think is beyond that?
Like I said, water. Just like Genesis says, there's water below us, there's water above us, there's water outside it. So I hope I never do penetrate. And if you look into the atomic tests that were done by the Russians and Americans, it's called Operation Fishbowl. This is the name of the operation. Write this down, because I think this is a very intriguing thing that you got to look into. They did operations called Operation Fishbowl and also Dominic. Now, if you look up Dominic, it means of the Lord. So literally they did operations called Fishbowl of the Lord. They shot nukes up there, Russia and the U.S., trying to hit something. It looks like they're hitting something way up there, high altitude explosions going on. So what I'm saying is I don't believe it's penetrable. I don't believe that you can actually get out. I might come across it. It would be, some sort of force field. It would be something hard. It would be something translucent. I don't know. And I'm not going to ever claim to know. I'm just going to say that I believe that's the case. I believe that the Tower of Babel with Nimrod, he was desperately trying to get up there.
So one last question I just thought would be interesting. What are your opinions on Elon Musk, since he's not a government guy. He's an individual, like trillionaire or whatever. What are your opinions on him?
Well, first of all, I mean, if you actually start researching it, because I've done multiple videos on my channel, Celebrate Truth on YouTube, on Elon Musk, there's a lot of problems with Elon Musk. But Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, all these supposed private space enterprises and stuff, there's a lot of connections with the government, with NASA. But here, I'll just leave it with this. If anyone sincerely believes that car that he shot up in space is real, Understand that he claimed that car, nothing was modified. It was an absolute roadster Tesla, completely right off the factory line, sent off into space. Why didn't the tires explode? Why is there no like motor? I mean, you can see the earth through the tires. Just dissect that video and ask yourself, because there were people all different places in the world that were laughing at that weren't even, in this at all. They just said, you got to be kidding me, because that's the level we're at right now. Somebody can actually do something like that, and people can just believe that that's actually the truth. Again, the tires would have blown up. If you understand space, if you understand the temperatures, just like satellites being in the thermosphere, it gets to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever, 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit in the thermosphere, and yet they're not burning up. They go forever. There's just a lot of problems when you get into space, and there's a lot of people smarter than me, looking at all this kind of stuff. But I would say SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, if you go back, especially Virgin Galactic and SpaceX, they've been promising things for so long. It's all part of the deception. That's why you and I will never go to space. We will never go to space. Yeah. You literally have to be a Freemason. You have to go through the army. And if you look at even the astronauts, what I call into question is there's some good, solid astronauts, sure. But you got to remember that their oaths that they swear are higher. Their oath is to the country and to the greater good. So I'm saying, would they lie? I believe that they would, and I believe there's a lot of evidence to support that.
So why do you have to be a Freemason to go into space?
I'm not saying you have to be. I'm just saying a lot of them are when you start looking into it. If you start looking into Buzz and you start looking into a lot of the Apollo stuff when they came back from the moon and stuff, there's just a lot of questions to be answered.
Awesome. Robbie, thank you so much for your time. It was really enlightening and gave us a lot to think about. Lauren and I will discuss this and probably have some commentary on it, but I really appreciate your time and taking the time to call us from Canada.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such an interesting conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. And if you ever have any more questions in the future, let me know. But for sure, check out my documentaries, Scientism Exposed and Scientism Exposed 2. I go into a lot of areas, not just with cosmology. I get into a lot of different areas of science. And my channel on YouTube, Celebrate Truth, I've got almost 400 videos now of content. And it seems to me like a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. And it's interesting what people are finding out. So thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye-bye. So, Lauren, on the phone right now is your 25-year-old millennial brother, Riley, living in L.A. Hello, Riley.
Hello, it's me, Riley.
So, Riley, we've been talking about movies, we've been talking about film, we've been talking about culture. So what's your take on Ready Player One?
I'm very into VR. I have friends in the VR scene here. I go to a lot of VR events and working on getting my own headset set up. Yeah, I was a big fan of the book.
Did you like the movie?
The movie was fun. It was good. Visually, it was great. And, I think it was a fun movie. I think they didn't handle the story well. It felt very bad pacing-wise. The whole book takes place over, 4 months or something like that? Right. And they tried to make it look like it all happened in 2 days or a day, the same day. Right. And he falls in love with this girl when he meets her, and so that was super cheesy and weird.
Well,
they could have at least done a time lapse, or they could have done something. They could have had a song, and they could have done quick cuts of different stuff of them hanging out and doing the other stuff in the books. So the pacing was way off. It was super cheesy, but overall it was good. And I think the VR stuff was actually pretty realistic. Other than them walking, there was the scene when they were doing that big battle, and they were driving in the van. And all these people are walking around on their VR headsets. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, I thought that was a little weird.
VR, because if you're in public with VR, you can just get mugged or taken advantage of. So why would anyone ever do that? They would do augmented reality like that, but no one would ever do virtual reality like that.
I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but I felt the thing with the girl, I felt it was almost he had watched all of her videos. He said he watched all of her Twitch streams. I felt it was one of those things where he's a big fan of hers and was in love with her because of that already. And that's why he felt he knew her. But
but there was no development there. They just were he just met her. They did the little race. They talked once in the garage, and then the next scene he's I love you. It's what? No, that's not how it works. That's not a thing.
Maybe in the future that happens really fast.
No, it's not. That's not the thing.
So the virtual reality world, everybody in the world hooked into the virtual reality, doing their commerce and buying stuff. Do you think that'll ever be a real thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's already there. I've already seen companies starting to try to move that way and starting to figure out a way to monopolize VR. It's kind of hard now, though, because it's very early stages and everything is very fan-based. For instance, one of the biggest VR platforms right now where a lot of people that stream and go to is VR Chat, and that's through Steam, and it's a game technically, but anyone can make their own world. So it's basically just people that have their own worlds that people can teleport to and check out. And so they're making crazy things. They're making I think someone said they're working on the Oasis right now and their version of what it would look like in Ready Player One. But it's just made by people and artists and graphic designers and programmers. There's
so
no
the
company
Reddit.
that's taken over yet.
It's like the Reddit of VR. That is.
No, because there isn't a mainstream VR yet. It hasn't gone mainstream yet. Mm-hmm. The only people that have VR and that are doing it all the time and actually are working on it are the diehard VR people or people that are really into it, which makes it a cool community and makes it a cool place because it's they can smell something fishy a mile away. So if a company tried to come in and say, we're going to make this world and you can pay $5 to have a month of membership here, people will be like, no, why would we do that when someone can make the same thing for free for us? I mean, if you think about it, VR is really run by millennials and run by kids that are all about doing it for free and doing it for fun and doing it for the love of it. So a lot of these programmers have Patreons, which is you can set up a Patreon and people can donate and pay $5 a month and then they get special access to stuff or just to support them. And so a lot of them do it for free and just have a Patreon or a Twitch stream when they do stuff and then make money that way.
So I know. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so it's just I think it's cool. I think VR is really cool right now because it's it's the Wild West and people are just messing around and figuring stuff out. And so when someone figures something out, it's really cool because everyone is amazed by it and then try to figure out how to do it themselves, whether that's avatars or worlds or things or bots, all that sort of stuff. But it's happening and you can see it happening if you right now. This is kind of it's just now becoming a thing. And then I would say in the next couple of years, there'll be a cheaper version or way to do it. I mean, PlayStation already has their PlayStation VR, which is pretty cost effective, but there'll be a $100 to $200 headset that'll be coming, and then people will start hopping on, I think.
So when you go by these stores in the mall, like Microsoft stores, and they have the big VR headsets and everybody's in there waiting in line to try it, is that VR Lite or what's going on there?
So that is VR. That's what it's like. Those games and those things they have set up are totally cool and are VR. But what people don't know is you can do that yourself at home. You don't have to wait in line for the way that things are going right now. Companies are setting up VR escape rooms per se. They're setting up a place you can go and pay for VR and do a 30-minute experience for whatever price. But it's silly because it's you can do that same experience at home for free if you have the setup. So it's just interesting because they haven't figured out how to monetize it yet. But I think the VR communities, there are some people that are super into monetizing things, but I think the VR community as a whole is very against monetizing things and is all about sharing the information and sharing things, which is interesting.
So interesting. It makes me feel like I'm watching the age of film over again or the age of internet over again, where at the beginning age of film, studying film history, I feel like they didn't know how to sell it. So they'd sell, 50 cent and everyone could go look individually and look at a Nickelodeon and watch the film. And then once they realized they could show it to big groups of people at the same time, how to do it. So it's kind of like the early stages of how to show films. And then now we're at the place where you just have it in your own home or everyone has a DSLR camera and you can make a film. And VR is a sped up version of that, I feel like.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, I think the movie got one thing really right, and that was what's the main guy's name? The guy that created the
Spielberg?
That created the Oasis.
Oh, Halliday.
Yeah, I feel like they got Halliday spot on. That's the type of
person.
Yeah,
he's every VR guy.
Yeah, that is VR creators and our programmers, and they want to do it for fun because they enjoy it and they know others can get joy from it. They don't want to do it for money. There are people that are probably hey, I can manage you and we can make money off this, but they don't care about that. They want to do it because they enjoy it and they have fun doing it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how big companies try to monetize things. I think it's going to be pretty spot on how like there'll be weapons you can buy and that'll destroy everything for $1,000, and these like New York stockbrokers will be paying the big bucks so they can just come in and let off steam, blowing up a bunch of people. But there'll also be the diehards and a lot of the community that's there right now that are all about doing things for free and doing it for the community that they are involved in, or the clan they're involved in per se. It's interesting. The first VR podcast happened. I don't know if it was technically the first one, but the first like organized one on Twitch happened a while ago with some people I follow. So that was really cool because they were all sitting in a podcast room in their VR avatars, like talking and having a podcast.
That's really cool.
And they're all around the world. So it's pretty cool because they can all sit at the same time and literally see and talk and interact and touch each other in VR. And it feels like real life, and they're around the world. So there's a lot of benefits and good things that can come out of VR, and that people haven't even – honestly, I don't think people even know that it's already here. I think that's the issue is I think a lot of these VR companies that are working – like Vive, for instance, that are working on these new headsets and are trying to find out how to do the best haptic feedbacks and that sort of stuff, I think they're kind of not making it super public because they're not ready to, if that makes sense. They don't want – people to come in that don't know anything about VR or about the whole thing and mess everything up and whine about this isn't working, because it's kind of the Wild West. As I said, it's kind of you go into it knowing that things aren't going to be perfect, but you're part of the experience of making it better for everyone in the future. It's kind of like the space race where someone will come out with one and the other one will be like, well, we have a better version that gets this much, it'll look this good compared to that good, and it can do this instead of that, and it has a camera on the front so you don't even have to take it off. You can like see outside without taking it off. It's like a space race right now to who can make the best VR headset before it'll max out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
And that's going really fast. Like, there's been 2 headsets so Vive made their regular headset, I want to say a couple years ago, and they just came out with their Pro this year. And then there's a couple other companies that are coming out with headsets this year too. And then they already have full body tracking and stuff. Like, it used to just be like you'd have room tracking where you could track, like, it could track your arms and stuff, but your body, you'd have to move around with your controller. But now they have full body tracking already. And then they have, like, there's a company, I think out of Russia, that made this like conveyor belt thing, so you can like actually walk, kind of like in the movie.
So you're gonna have like haptic
that
suits?
already exists.
How fast till they have that whole setup where you strap in and you can walk around on a belt and like just experience it?
That exists to an extent now. They don't have a good haptic feedback yet. I actually have a video I just was watching with a friend today at work about a guy that's developed a haptic feedback for gloves, so you can actually feel rain and you can feel stuff touching like it's actually touching your skin. But they don't have.
That's cool.
It'll be a while probably till they perfect that and make it available for purchase. That's going to be a hard one, I think, just because of like. I think there's going to be a lot of legality, right, stuff. It'll be easy to sue if something goes wrong and you light on fire, or electricity, or it's too hard of feedback. You can sue really easily with that. There's a big VR Fest convention coming to LA soon that I'm probably going to go to. So I'll let you know what I can see there or what I figure out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the update. What's the conspiracy theory of the week?
I mean, you could go into lizard people.
Explain lizard people to people that don't understand.
So reptilians are what they're called. They're also called lizard people. I think draconians is the other official word for them. Basically, they'll show up in every conspiracy theory in some way. They're basically a species of reptilian-like people that are controlling the earth, and that are using people, and they're using the human form to manipulate people and to take power and to take political power so they can overthrow everything. And
so who's a lizard person?
I mean, there's a whole list, but I don't know.
Like basically famous people or lizard people?
Or do they kill famous people and then lizard people take over, become them?
So that is a very discussed thing, because some people believe both.
Because that's what happened to Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, that's fake. I've read into that. That was like a BuzzFeed created fake.
That's
thing.
My favorite one.
All right, well, tell us a real one then.
A real one? I think Hillary Clinton's a lizard person. Straight up. There's multiple videos of her eyes dilating and doing this weird like blink
I've seen
thing.
that.
And there's like multiple videos of it.
But isn't there fake videos?
No, they're real. I mean, you could say they're fake videos, but that's what they want you to think.
So, question: if you had the chance to go to Mars, but you can't ever come back, but you go to be the first people to colonize Mars, and you had the chance, would you do it?
No, that'd be terrible. Maybe like when they terraform Mars and it's done, yeah. But I'm not going to be a part of terraforming. It'd be so bad.
It'd be like living in LA.
I would totally do it.
It wouldn't be that great. It
would be horrible, but think about what you do for society.
20 years after they're done on Mars, but no one's going to remember your name as the person that terraformed Mars because there's so many people that are going to be doing it.
I don't know.
I don't know. It would be like, these are the people that came here first, and I don't know. I think I would do it.
You remember the people that first came on the Mayflower?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we talk about the people that came on the Mayflower every year. We have a holiday for them.
Yeah, but you don't know their names. Who are the however many people that came on the Mayflower? You don't know their names. It's going to be the same thing.
I don't know. I feel like it's the same. It's a little bit different, but it is. I think we still talk about the Mayflower.
It's not different. It's the same thing. It's like they knew nothing about America. They knew it was this crazy place across oceans that would take forever to go, and they knew nothing about it. They had no communication. They just went and figured it out. It's the same thing.
And without them, we wouldn't have our country.
I agree. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying we don't know the names of the however many people that were on all of those ships.
Well, it's not all about the names. It's about what you do for society and the rest of the world and humanity itself.
Yeah, but
think about getting to go explore that. That's so cool.
No, it'll be cool once it's terraformed. It's not going to be cool till then.
If you can actually get outside of the dome.
Yeah, but that's what VR's for. Just wait for a VR version to come out and do it then. Don't have to leave your room.
There you go.
Well, do you think okay, so do you think the one thing holding VR back is people's fear of people never leaving their rooms and never drinking water or eating and people dying from doing VR for too long?
I mean, that's what's going to be the first things. Some kid's going to die from dehydration or from not eating or from being plugged in for too long, and then it's going to be a big press thing about it, and it's VR's the worst because this, and it's terrible, and it's killing children, and that's how it always is. That's everything with video games. I mean, it's just part of the game. I don't know. People are like, school shooters are school shooters because they played violent video games. That's like the dumbest thing. It's going to be the same. It'll be that same comparison. It's like one person did this because of this, therefore it's bad. I don't know. It's a silly way to think, and I think that will be a thing. And yes, like you do need to drink water, and you need to have an alarm set for drinking water and that sort of stuff. But if you're smart about it, that's not an issue.
I feel like our generation doesn't really get upset by that. I feel like it's an older generation. And do you feel like
older generations, I feel, are more scared of change than our generation is.
Okay.
We want change and we want new things. We don't want to be stuck and we want a new version of old things. While I think older generations are comfortable in the way things are. And we disrupt
I think
that.
we were talking to
we're talking to Rabbi Nolan about this.
Yeah, Rabbi Nolan about this. And we asked the same question. And talking about wanting to accept people and have peace and wanting to find things in common rather than things that we have different. And, I was saying that I remember when I was, young, your age or younger, and I wanted that. And then the generation before me in the 60s, they wanted that. And I think it's when you get older, you get comfortable, you don't like change. And so you'll get to that point at some point in 20 years or so, and then you'll have to decide, okay, am I going to be as open-minded or do I dislike change as much as my dad did or my grandfather did?
Yeah, and I think that's like a daily choice for a lot of people. But I mean, it's just like change is always good, and I think in my thought process, sometimes even things that are bad can help change things in the future. Like a bad event or a bad thing can make things better in the future. So change is always going to end up being good as a whole. Whether that's, I don't know if you know what I mean. I don't know if I'm describing that well, but I think change in general is always going to be for the better. There's very few times where something like hasn't gotten better from change down the line. I mean, if you look at like things that don't change, you could think about like the ancient Romans. They didn't want to change things and they got comfortable. Or like the Nazis, they didn't want to change and then I don't know. They're just like places and things that don't change always end up killing themselves or disrupt it. Something happens because of not changing with the times or not changing with whatever, and then they don't exist anymore.
Or you could look at it as they did change and they've morphed into something else. I think every society and the United States isn't going to last forever. At some point there's going to be a fall, or we're going to merge, or something's going to happen that it's not going to be the United States forever and ever and ever. The world as we know it. If the world continues for another 1,000 years, none of the societies I feel like we've set up are going to still be here as they are.
Well, that's why we're terraforming Mars. We're getting ahead of the game.
That's why we're in VR.
That's why we're in VR. Yeah, if we can self-sustain by putting a bunch of people in like liquid containers like in the Matrix and just plug them into VR, why wouldn't we? It's like, I don't know.
Okay, so now, not to belabor the point, but getting back to VR. So what are the potential moral implications of VR?
I mean, it's just like anything. It's a tool that can be used for good or bad. And I think it's scary that this day and age, news and media likes to get scared of tools and blames the tools and not the people.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Look at that with guns. I'm not going to get into guns politically, but it is a tool that in essence is made for a bad thing, for killing, or for a necessary thing, some people might say, for killing. And it can be used for good or bad. VR is the same way. It can be used for really, really good things, like an autistic child or a person with learning disabilities that doesn't do well in a classroom. They can have learning on VR with a one-on-one professional around the world. You look at kids. I know people personally that are super awkward and like don't have any social skills and don't know how to talk to people, and they have VR and they have video games, and it's helped them learn how to talk to people and to be comfortable, and that now they went out into the world and got a job, like stuff like that. It can be used for good, and there's so many things that can be used for good, and on the reverse side it can be used for bad things and for evil. But I mean, I don't understand why people are so always, whenever VR is brought up, that comes up as moral implications. It's the same moral implications of the internet. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's like, if you're asking VR could be used for evil, it's like, I can order a 5-year-old Asian girl from Asia on the internet right now, but I'm not going to because I don't want to use my computer for evil. Like, that's stuff like that's always going to exist. And
I think we're
available.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think where I think people get a little nervous is when you start saying, okay, now we're creating an alternate reality that affects our senses, that affects
But that's the same thing as your phone is an alternate reality that affects your senses. You get an endorphin hit every time Instagram like comes up. You're doing that every day. And phones, kids have
That's
phones
true.
at 8 years old, and they're in a different reality when they're looking at their phones playing Minecraft. Like, that's not different than what we've been doing. And before that, it was books and comic books and drawings and art, and that's how you escape reality. People always want to escape reality. It's just a better version of escaping reality.
Right.
Whether you use that for good or for evil, that's your choice. And that, I think, as a society and as people, we should stop looking at tools as the bad thing and how we can change tools, and we start looking at people and why people are messed up and how we can change that.
Well, I guess where I was going with it is, for instance, let's say we create something like the Oasis, and there are people in there from all over the world in alternate universes. And if do you think we'll get to the point where we'll set up rules and laws on what you can do to other people inside that alternative universe?
Yeah, and it'll change from place to place. That's why I think that's why VR is so cool, is because there's different. It's not. You can't, when you think about VR and you look at VR, you can't look at it as from like a worldly aspect. You can't look at it from the viewpoint that you look at life now, because it's different.
You got to look at it like websites, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like the internet, to where you go on VR, you have everything available. Do you want to be a cat and hang out with a bunch of cats and dogs? You can do that and meow for an hour and a half. Do you want to like sit around a coffee shop that looks like a coffee shop in real life with human avatars, talk to people and do that? You can do that. Do you want to go somewhere where you can just murder your friends and have fun killing each other in like a stupid like sword fighting gladiator arena? You can do that. It's like, it's not just like one thing. It's like different places will have different rules and have different things set up, and it's based off of whoever controls that virtual place. And a lot of places don't have one person that's in charge of things.
Gotcha. Well, Riley, thank you for the enlightening time on VR.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'll get a conspiracy theory ready for next time.
Yeah, for sure. How's LA going?
LA's good. Yeah, it's hot, but it's good. And it's fun.
Anything interesting happened lately in LA?
All the time.
Tell us
Can
an
you tell the
LA
listeners?
update.
Tell the listeners just briefly LA update about the wild creatures around your apartment.
Or the wild people.
They're both. So I live in Echo Park, which is right outside of Silver Lake and about 15 minutes from downtown. And I am surrounded by cats. They're just wild cats everywhere. I've seen like probably 7 or 8 different ones around my apartment. One of them is a personal friend and companion of mine, Chancho. And every time I go outside, he like follows me around, like all the way down the sidewalk and all the way back up the sidewalk. But it might be a girl, I just found out. So that changes things. I've changed the name. But there's also these giant raccoons that are the size of like, what, a tire?
They are huge.
I have never seen a raccoon so big. And they just like come out at night and scavenge anything they can find and go and dig around. And then apparently there's coyotes that are around too.
I saw them. When we visited you, I saw them, and you haven't seen them yet. But anybody doesn't believe me, Google wild coyotes of Echo Park. There's lots of articles and pictures on.
Yeah, and I talked to one of my friends here, and he's like, "Oh yeah, a lot of them are like tagged, and like they know where they are, and like keep an eye on them," which is like crazy.
But what's so weird? Coyotes are normally pretty hostile and search in packs, and they eat small animals. Apparently, they're not doing that there.
What are they eating?
I don't know, but they're not eating the cats.
There's probably just so much
trash. They're not
trash.
eating the raccoons.
The raccoons would kill them. Those raccoons are bigger than the
Those
coyotes.
raccoons would beat them. I've heard of a guy getting chased by one of the raccoons by our house. Like down the street, it chased him all the way to the bus. So like
maybe you needed a hug.
Yeah, that's probably it. I don't know. But I mean, with Echo Park, the park itself, like there's a lot of places for them to like live that other than where the homeless people set up.
Echo Park, Riley, we walked all the way around it. Where do the coyotes live? There's nowhere for them to live.
Well, there's like a little tree section like off parts to the side, and like there's like a big area with like a bunch of trees, and like it looks like a little bit of a forest. And there's forests in like Los Feliz. There's like a trail that's like a big like a small national park forest too, which isn't that far away from me either.
They kind of come down from the hills, and
I'm sure they
forage at night and go back.
Yeah,
there's like huge hills of like for miles high with like trees and like nothing there, so they could live in there somewhere too, I'm sure.
Okay, well, have a good evening.
Bye. I have nothing to plug. Follow me on social media. You can give me money on Venmo. I don't know. All right, bye.
Bye, Riley.
Wow, Lauren, that was a lot. My head is still spinning. Lots of conspiracies, lots of interesting perspectives. So what do you think?
I loved it. I love conspiracy theories. I think it's important that people think for themselves, even if they don't necessarily believe it. It's kind of a fun, creative outlet to imagine that it's real for a little while.
Or to maybe question what you assumed was always true. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with questioning.
If it's true, then it will stand up. And if it's not, maybe you should reevaluate it. So that's what I walked away from today.
Yeah. If you guys are liking XYZ, please leave us a comment and rate the podcast. We'd love for you to tell your friends. And don't be shy to tell us what you would like to hear us talk about, what kind of guests you would like to have on in the future. Thanks for listening.